Hey y'all, I am excited to welcome to the Scope of Practice podcast our guest today, Dr. Christopher Liu. Dr. Liu, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey Brent, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be on the show.
Yeah, you've had quite the journey, quite the journey. I would say kind of unconventional for someone going through med school. In particular today, I want to focus on the financial freedom aspect of stuff that you've written fairly prolifically on. You've got what, four books out, I think,
Mhm.
and a couple of online courses now. So
Yeah.
a lot of great content out there. But when you were going through med school, I mean, was this kind of was the idea of achieving financial freedom so early? Was that sort of always the goal, or did you sort of fall into that?
Yeah. Well, I grew up always the outsider, so I always developed a really strong entrepreneurial skill set, and that was sort of my insurance against any sort of calamities. So I mean the end goal was always financial independence and financial freedom. So that's why I started to delve into more self education, learning about business, how to manage personal finances, and really learning about investing. And eventually, I transitioned into entrepreneurship.
Did you get a lot of flack from that on that from your classmates? Like, dude, we're supposed to be studying anatomy and physiology. What are you talking about? I don't want to talk about stock options right now.
Yeah, I actually it was interesting because I actually kept it under wraps because well, especially when my parents found out that I was like learning about stocks and options, they were like, oh, you need to focus on anatomy and cardiology, and you need to ace your steps so you can get into a good residency. And I actually didn't tell any of my classmates about any of my ventures, so I always just kept it on the down low. It wasn't until I got into Rice that I actually started to branch out and share it more, because Rice was just it was like the center of nanotechnology with the discovery of the buckyball. So that's when I started two companies, and I started to really they had a center for entrepreneurship, and they had a lot of seminars and courses that I started going to.
Okay, I can't let us drive past that. Like that was just sort of a lovely little offhand comment aside. Like I started two companies, whatever, no big deal. So tell us about that. Like
Yeah.
that's quite the difference. Quite the aberrant stream from the normal pathway through medicine. So what was that like? I mean, was it they were they related to some of your undergraduate work, or was it just something that just you're like, okay, I need to do something different, or what was the impetus for all that?
Well, my impetus was my wake up call was actually on 9/11, because I was actually going through the traditional route. I thought I had it set. I got into Baylor for medical school. That was my first choice, and all I thought I had to do was get into a residency, fellowship, and then get a job as an attending. And then towards my second year of medical school, I started to see when we started our rotations, I started to see a lot of burnout in the attendings and the residents. A lot of the residents were unhappy, and that sort of I felt that. So I started to examine what was causing that. So a lot of it was managed care was coming in, and a lot of insurance bureaucracy regulations, a lot of resident duty hours. These sort of things were coming into the picture. So so 9/11 was my wake up call, because that's a lot of my friends were in the working world. They had gotten jobs, and I saw them lose their jobs because of the economy. So I started to realize that depending on a job for income and stability really wasn't the way to go, that I had to start creating my own job stability and have backup income streams in case things such as these sort of COVID-19, the financial crisis, and things that nature happened.
So I think that's really, really smart and something that we need to be, I think, taking away from this year's financial crisis. So you had this happen when you were in med school, right? Was when September 11th happened,
Yeah.
and then we had the big financial crisis in 2008, 2009, and there's obviously this huge event here in 2020.
Hmm.
So I imagine that there's some medical students and interns and residents out there that are listening, going, okay, maybe this needs to be my wake up call. So
Yeah.
when that happened to you, what did you start thinking about? Did you start thinking about immediately, okay, I need to start doing real estate, or I need to start doing stocks, or was it just I need to do something different, and I need to go figure out what my options are.
Yeah, it was the second. It was the paradigm. I realized that the paradigm that I was operating under was going to become obsolete in 10, 20 years. And if I didn't do anything about it, I would be out of a job or get automated or outsourced. So that's what I first started. Then I started to study the all of the super wealthy, the people that you hear about every day, Warren Buffett and Steve Jobs and those sort of types. So I started studying success because they say that success leaves clues. So I started studying why were they successful, what habits, what mindsets, what skill sets were they developing to be where they wanted to be. So then that led me to the two most obvious were the ultra wealthy generated their wealth and their assets and their income, and that was one through real estate, um, and then we can talk about the different advantages and disadvantages of real estate. And then the second one was in finance, so that was in stocks and options. So those were the two vehicles that mainstream individuals that could go into to achieve financial freedom and independence. The other thing was starting a business and becoming an entrepreneur. Those three vehicles were the way towards financial freedom, independence, and the wealth generation.
So, having these multiple streams of income, that you were able to sort of establish this in 2001, 2002, as you're getting started with this. So, I would imagine that when we hit the financial crisis in 08, 09, and then again here in 2020, you're probably in a much stronger position. Did you feel more secure? Did you feel more at ease just with all the chaos going around? You're like, whatever. I'm pretty solid. I got this.
Uh-huh. It's actually 2020 was been a great year because all of the work from 2008 up to now, certain aspects of my company withstand and withheld against the devastating effects of COVID-19, and those were in the digital and the virtual realms. There were aspects of my companies that got disrupted, especially with my short-term rentals, with the real estate, and so what I've been doing now is focusing more on when the next crisis hits in the next several years, I'll be better prepared. So always be prepared for cancellations, travel restrictions, immigration requirements, and things of that nature. But like I said, there are some aspects of 2020 that I just did not see coming. There were certain aspects that I did see and that I was well prepared for, because that was what I learned from 2008. But there were just some things were just unpredictable. So
Well, you decided fairly early on in your career that financial independence, or some degree of financial autonomy was important for you. Do you think that's an important aspirational goal for the average physician?
yes, I actually think it's now more important than ever, because now the quality of life for physician is one full of high stress. We still enjoy very lucrative and high incomes, but like I said, there's the effects of managed care, the way the finance and the banking system and the way money works now. It's forcing a lot of physicians to rethink the traditional idea of a 9 to 5, 40 hours, the sort of industrial paradigms. So I really think, even if you're not a physician, I think just mainstream, we all need better financial literacy, education, independence, just for our own survival and our own prosperity.
Yeah, and I think that's really right. It's been amazing to me the degree to which healthcare was really affected this year. It was kind of amazing. I think I always thought of medicine being a profession that's maybe not recession proof, but at least recession resistant.
Hmm.
And I think this year kind of proved us all wrong on that.
Yeah.
And I saw lots of stories of folks that lost their jobs. I know I was coaching physicians that were applying for unemployment benefits. I mean, in my lifetime, I never thought I would see that. You have entire hospitals that are shutting down because they're riding so close to the margin that as soon as something big hits, bam, this their whole plan just goes out the window.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's just the stories you hear. Just you thought this. I had one client. He was a well-paid surgeon, highly paid surgeon. Had a nice house and car, and then just all of a sudden, he out of the blue. I coached him back in 2018, about diversifying into different passive income streams, and then 2 years later he's still no assets, no savings. Now he's asking me what to do. So best thing is to get educated and start preparing for these types of events and situations.
Yeah, the thing I always tell my residents, my students, is that the best day to invest something was yesterday, and so the next best day is today.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I mean, it's just a matter of getting started. And the good thing about this is that there's all kinds of content out there. So this stuff is learnable. And goodness knows everybody. And if you got through med school, you're smart enough to figure out all the rest of the stuff. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
And there's certainly enough content out there. I mean, between folks like you with a bunch of great books, or sites like mine, there's stuff out there. There's people willing to teach you.
Yeah, it's just right now we're in this. I wish I was in medical school now than 20 years ago, because now the amount of resources, information. Back then we didn't have even YouTube or Facebook, and now it's like you can just go on and just you have information and just valuable content at your fingertips that you can just get for free too. So it's just the information age has been, it's just commoditized knowledge, and it's allowed us to just really take that knowledge, and now we have to sort of organize and apply it to our goals.
Right. Now, diversifying into different income streams like, real estate or stocks or side hustles and things like that, that's all, fine. But I think most people will see that kind of thing as a side thing, or as a supplement to their primary income. But you went so Christmas crazy with it, like it just replaced your full time income. Was it hard giving up medicine to go off and do this, or was it just like the next new adventure that you were just excited about?
Well, there was a point in my journey when my intuition said, you have all the resources, you have all the education, all the information you need. Because by my second year residency, I had two investment properties. I had built up a nice stock portfolio, and I was just miserable in residency, just the healthcare system, and I really wasn't pursuing my passion. So there was this point where my intuition just said, you're ready. You just need experience. So, but like I said, like my program director, my colleagues, my parents, my wife, I had so much backlash just because they thought I was going crazy, and I had so much resistance, especially in terms of the social conditioning. So that was the part that I really had to get past and get over with. And so that's sort of in my personal growth and evolution. That's when I started to really be intentional about my network, who I surround myself with, my feelings, my emotions, my intentions, and really start setting boundaries for what I wanted out of life.
Okay, I want to dive on that just a little bit, because that's really an important thing. The idea of having a support network. Now that's a two-edged sword though, right? Because you got people that love you, that want the best for you, and they see a particular path that you're taking. You're like, I don't know if this is really the best idea. You're giving up a sure thing for something that's not a sure thing.
Yeah.
How do you separate the advice that's loving but against what you're going for, versus folks that are just the haters?
I like that question because really it comes down to your values and beliefs. So, for example, I think the way that I did it, I wouldn't change a second of any of my path and journey, because I think medical school taught me a lot of skill sets needed to be able to succeed, to make an impact, to become an influencer. If I didn't go through medical school and residency, I think I would be struggling to reach physicians and to be an influencer. So I think the skill sets really helped. These days in 2020, if I were a medical student, I'd probably just go straight into starting my company and business, because the barriers to entry and the margins are just so much more favorable for entrepreneurship. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna no.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So it really depends, because I've always been an entrepreneur at heart, but I chose medicine just because that was the safe, the sure bet, the stable path. So that's why I went that path. But that path actually brought me to be able to connect with physicians and things of that nature. But you really have to, like I said, it's you have to your intuition. So I always tell all my clients, just your intuition is your number one asset in the face of any sort of haters or people that love you but want, they say they want the best for you. You just have to listen to that in that quiet, still quiet voice, and just go in that direction. And it's really hard because I'm still honing my intuition, but it's something that I've been developing since I was a little kid.
Yeah, and I think the ability to trust that voice comes with confidence, and to me, confidence comes with knowledge and experience. And so that's the great thing about this is that anybody can educate themselves. This isn't hard stuff. I mean, most of this stuff is like sixth grade, eighth grade, 10th grade math. It's just not that challenging. It's new and it's different, and you got to learn it. But the more you know, the more you learn, the more confident you can become, the greater ability you have to trust that intuition.
Yeah, exactly. And it just starts, I think the biggest thing preventing physicians from really just flourishing and getting unstuck and untrapped is just their fears, because we're conditioned to be to be fear adverse, so avoid complications, avoid lawsuits. So really it's just that whole, if you can take small steps, small action steps that address your fears, eventually you'll be able to be at a point where you can make bigger and bigger decisions that require more and more courage.
Yeah, and I think that that incremental step up into more and more courageous decisions is a really good analogy, because you took this all the way to sort of an extreme level where you got so good at replacing your income that you were able to just give up medicine entirely. I think it's a tiny percentage of physicians who will actually end up doing that.
Hmm.
But I think that that should be an encouragement to people, not a discouragement to people. Because if it's possible for someone to do this so well that they're able to completely replace a physician level income, then it should be very possible, very reachable for the average physician to diversify their income streams enough that they at least have some more financial security. Even if it's only like another 10% or another 15% increase in their income streams, that diversification and that increase can provide a lot of security and peace.
Yeah, I totally agree, because as most physicians, we go into healthcare because we want to help people. It's challenging, it's intellectually stimulating, it's rewarding. So but I think the system itself just beats us down. So and a lot of us, if I think if we develop more streams of passive income where we're not really, where it's, if we're we're not really dependent on one single source, we enjoy a much better quality of life in terms of both career satisfaction in our families, our relationships, and our overall health as well.
Yeah. Well, I want to dive into some of your books a little bit because I think that there's some really, really great content to pull out from there. But I think my favorite title of your books is your first one, How
Yeah.
I Quit My Lucrative Medical Career and Achieve Financial Freedom Using Real Estate. I mean, that's just phenomenal. But in that book, you make the argument that physicians are actually losing money in their full-time medical career despite having a high income. So what do you mean by that?
So there's I read this one really good book. It's just recently. It's called Procrastinate on Purpose, and it's
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah, and it was actually really good because it's really delves into the nuances and specifics of the value of time. So I think in this day and age, we time is the most precious asset. It's not really money. Money is more of a resource that we can use to get more time. So really, what I meant by that is, as physicians, we're making six figures, seven figures, but we have decades of training, with student loan debt, mortgages. So we're also have to factor in the opportunity cost. What are we losing out on our marriages, our families? Do our kids resent us, and things of that nature. Also, ideas such as the hidden costs. So things where you're pursuing the income, but you're sacrificing your health, or you're sacrificing your time and your freedom and your overall happiness. So that's why, and really, if you look at it in terms of the finance system and the banking systems, with interest rates are at an all-time low and the Fed able to print trillions, so really what's that's doing is devaluing our money. So 800,000 per year is now what, like maybe 600, 700 per year. Factored into that, taxes. So you have to look into how much are you putting in and sacrificing, and how much are you getting out. So, and again, a high six-figure income is fine, but what are you getting in return for that, that 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 money?
Well, in terms of strategies, I want to dive into the real estate thing here in just a second because I think that that's one that people are going to be very interested in. But before we get to the actual nuts and bolts strategy, I want to ask your thoughts about the real estate market more broadly. If someone is, let's say you've got just an average Joe physician who is either maybe resident, fellow, or like first 5 or so years out of training, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that real estate is going to be generally the best way for someone to go if they're looking for financial independence, or do you think that some people need to be sticking with the stock market, or some people need to be opening up a small business, or is real estate really the best foundation for people?
It's really situation individual and niche, dependent. So in general, I think real estate is a fantastic vehicle for physicians for a lot of reasons: asset protection, wealth protection, and also wealth generation, tax savings, things of that nature. But you have to also factor in the idea of the way jobs are evolving in today's economy. So a lot of physicians, we're not going to just plant our seeds in one place and stay there for 40 to 50 years. So you have to look at the idea of mobility. So in that case, if you're gonna buy a $1 million home, but you're gonna move in the next year, that's not really the best decision. So you have to take into really the way the things are changing. There's still real estate stocks are still some of the best investments for physicians, but you have to factor in individual factors such as mobility. You have to factor in things such as student loan debt and a lot of individually based factors. But I would say for the resident just coming out, one thing you could do is just buy a smaller house, and then and from there, what you can rent out a room, you can house hack it, you can put it on Airbnb to generate some extra income. The other thing is what I know a lot of my physician colleagues, friends, and investors, what they did was they chose to rent, but then they chose to use that extra income to invest in asset produce or income producing properties. So you can do that as well. So that way you're not stuck. That mortgage is not a consumptive mortgage. It's more of an investment debt. So the easiest thing is to dollar cost average, because as a attending just coming out, you're gonna enjoy a nice six-figure salary or higher, and you can just dollar cost average into the market, and over 10-20 years it's gonna do well.
So, for our listeners that maybe aren't familiar with the concept of dollar cost averaging, can you walk us through what that means?
Yeah, dollar cost averaging is essentially just developing a system, a plan. Usually 10%. I advocate if you can do 50% or higher. So what it is you're just every month you're putting in a certain portion of your income into the low cost index fund. So you can do it that way, and what that and over time, it's basically, so if you say, for example, the market is up this month, you're going to buy less shares of that index fund. But over time, so for example, let's say you have a market downturn and you're still investing at a regular rate, you're going to buy more shares. So over time, it's always going to increase in value. So.
Nice. So you're kind of you're riding the roller coaster. So you're buying just consistent, and sometimes it's going to be, on sale. Sometimes it's not going to be on sale, but on average, you're not. It's a way for you to sort of factor in, buy low and sell high.
Yeah.
Just sort of as an automatic thing.
Exactly.
And I think that's smart. That's kind of a nice, easy sort of set it and forget it
Yeah.
kind of a model for the average passive investor, and that's not a bad strategy.
Yeah.
So, but for someone who wants to do real estate investing and want to take it to the next level, you mentioned a couple of different things. So, for people who are looking to do their let's say I'm a first-time real estate investor, right?
Yeah.
And maybe I'm like 5 years out of my training, and my student debt's paid off. Which, by the way, I generally recommend people to have their debts cleared before they start doing a lot of investing. The last thing you want to do when you've got $500,000 in debt
Yeah.
is take on $500,000 more in debt. But
Yeah.
let's say we're in a nice, stable financial position. I'm like, okay, and I say, okay, now I am ready to start investing. Where do I go? Do I start looking at a syndication? Do I look at buying a single family home?
Hmm.
Like, do I start doing flipping? I mean, I know there's lots of different options, but what's a good starting place for someone like that?
Just a solid just single family residence. Just I would say, you know, 100 200,000 dollar in that range. You can also do condos as well. So those two, and the other thing you can do is house hack. So it's essentially you're getting that experience, but you're not. But you still have that expense, but it's not an extra expense. So you're getting cash flow from that, from your like an extra room and that sort of thing. So just
And
real.
so when you're saying house hacking, you mean like you have like a 3 bedroom house, but you're only using two, and you rent out the third room to a student, a college student, or something along those lines. You have a little rental income. That's the idea.
Yeah, exactly. So essentially, your monthly personal expenses for your own residence is offset by that extra income. So that's called house hacking. So
Gotcha.
yeah,
So for buying, okay, so I like your idea of buying a smaller house. That's one of the things that I think maybe turns people off from real estate investing is thinking like I don't have $1 million to put into some big real estate project, and
uh-huh.
it doesn't take that much. I mean, when I used to live in Pensacola, it's this is the panhandle of Florida. I mean, Escambia County was one of the poorest counties in the entire state. I mean,
Hmm.
there are plenty of houses that were 45 to 60 thousand dollars that are nice little one bed, one bath, two bed, one bath kind of homes that people live in and are nice and comfortable. And that's a fairly low barrier to entry. I mean, 20% down on a house like that's going to be 10, 12,
Yeah,
15 grand.
yeah.
I mean, you can save that up in pretty short amount of time. That's a great place to start and then build from there.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and really, because you know everybody needs a roof over their head, so all you need is you need to just get started and just start small and get experience, and from there grow. So you also mentioned syndicates. So I think with the internet and the way the field is progressing and evolving, I think syndicates are a great way for physicians to leverage their time and their money. So that's like an accelerator. I personally am not part of any syndicates, but I just like to see where the field evolves. So I think that's a great way. But again, you know, physicians need to do their due diligence and really know which company they're getting involved with, because you know, again, there's always bad apples out there.
Sure. So do you generally advise people to use a property management company, or do you generally advise people to do things on their own, or does that change over time depending on how many pieces of property you have?
Yeah, it changes over time. If you have a lot, you need a property manager because otherwise you're just gonna be running around putting out fires. So I recommend like your first investment, manage it yourself. That way you know all of the ins and outs, everything that can go wrong, everything, all of the good things, and then you can use a combination. So if like one particular property is a little bit more troublesome, you can be more active in that one. And certain properties that sort of run on autopilot, you can you can use a property manager for that. But in general, you also have to really vet property management companies because a lot of them aren't very good. So they'll just take your money and just not do anything. So you really have to really vet them and really have experience working with them. So because my experience is that you have to give away a lot of trust towards these companies so that they can do it the way manage your properties the way you like it to be managed.
So there's two real estate investing axioms that I've heard that I think people need to be aware of. One is the three most important aspects of real estate are location, location, and location. Right, so you need to have a good place that or a place that's in a good neighborhood, or it's an up and coming neighborhood, or is close to stuff. You don't want to buy something that's gonna no one's ever going to find and no one's going to want. But the second is that the money in real estate investing is made when you buy the property. That's the place where you make your biggest return is at the buy. So how do you find a good deal? What aspects are we looking for that sort of diamond in the rough property?
It depends on your market. So for the mantra location is always because usually I think that was from the single family bread and butter strategy. Like a nice safe neighborhood, good schools. Usually those were the that's where that paradigm came from. I've actually gone away from that paradigm a little bit because, so for example, a lot of my short-term rentals are in the medical center. So I really like, really they're around good medical schools. But if you look at the the junior high or elementary, I didn't really choose it based on those. I chose it because in proximity to the medical center. So it really depends on your market segment and your niche. So who are you really marketing to? But in general, safe neighborhood, low crime rate, good schools, affordable, and close to in locations that have like bird blossoming industries, good jobs, a good economy. So those are the sort of things. But then as you get more advanced, you can start to buy. So for example, I have one property in a up and coming area that used to be in a really questionable neighborhood, but now because things are changing and they need more housing and safer housing, and so that's a lot of developers are coming into that area. But again, those are just more advanced. But in general, just stick with just bread and butter basic strategies, and as you get more experience, you can branch out.
So how do you screen your tenants? Because one of the things that I know that it makes me very nervous to be a landlord. I mean, so my wife and I have been married for 13 years, and we rented for 10 of those 13 years. Because being in the military, you're moving every couple of years. It just
Mm-hmm.
never made financial sense to actually buy anything, which still grates on me because I'm just sitting here going, because I know that home ownership is a really important piece of financial
Uh-huh.
independence, but it just made so little financial sense except for those 3 years that we were in Florida.
Yeah.
So I know that when we were renting, we were really careful with the houses. We treated it like it was our own house. We were very careful. We always got our security deposit back. But I think every real estate investor has had stories of someone changing their motorcycle oil in their living room, or throwing a party that cost $15,000 worth of damage, or they had 9 cats, and they let the cats just use
Uh-huh.
the carpet as their personal litter box. And so, how do you screen out those people and find people that are going to stick with you and be really good tenants that are going to pay on time, that aren't going to tear the place up?
I screen them based on occupation. So before COVID-19, I have interesting stories. But before COVID-19, 99% of my tenants were all medical students, medical professionals, scientists, postdocs. So these are individuals. They have high integrity, high moral character. They're very conscientious. They take care of your place. They're not going to throw parties and that sort of thing. So and I've never had a single issue with any medical student, medical doctor, scientist. That's my number one screener. A lot of people do interview, background check, credit check, that sort of thing, but I screen based on occupation. So the interesting thing is, with COVID-19, when they shut down all the medical schools and hospitals, that was in March. All my clientele from the medical profession were wiped out. So I had to start opening it up to regular people, and that's when I started having problems. Majority were fine and decent, but again, that, as you say, if you don't screen them well, you're gonna have a lot of issues. So
That's really interesting. It's such an obvious strategy to screen based on occupation. I can't figure out why I never thought of that, but that's so obvious now that you say it. But
so
that's a really great way to do it, because you got to figure if someone, went through an entire rigorous interview. Basically, you're basically standing on the shoulders of the giants of the people that interviewed everybody, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like if you made it through 25 rounds of interviews and you beat out 99% of other people who applied, you got to be doing something right.
Yeah, exactly. And a physician, majority physicians not gonna have a criminal record, is not gonna have a misdemeanor. You know, they're not gonna put their license in jeopardy. So that's how I did it. So,
Golly, that's smart. I feel stupid for never having thought of that.
right.
So I'm learning stuff here. This is really, really good. So, well, let's shift gears a little bit because one of the other big pieces that you talk about, you've got a book on this as well, is consulting work. And
Hmm.
so, I think it was your third book was called "Getting Started as a Consultant,"
Yes.
and sort of launching yourself out and branding yourself in your niche. So, how did you get started in consulting? Was it through the digital companies you created, or was it more this financial independence stuff?
It's two branches. One is one where because I wanted to maintain a leg in the healthcare sector, and I think one of the industries in healthcare that has a lot of potential is healthcare technology. So whether that's well, I think the electronic health records, that's sort of phasing out now, but I'm also an advisor to a AI-based healthcare startup. So I think that was one, is just to maintain ties with the healthcare industry, because I still wanted to use my medical degree to good use. So that's one, and then the other aspect is where I do these digital content, and as a creator and as an influencer, podcasting, masterminds, online programs, and that sort of thing.
So, how do you find clients? What's your marketing strategy for that?
A lot of it is through LinkedIn. So I had my last mastermind course. I did a segment on networking through LinkedIn. So I leverage the internet and the platforms. I also do. I have my private Facebook group that I use, and then a lot of it's just once my first consulting client was in 2017, and from there I just developed a lot of good relationships. I worked hard. I provided a lot of value, and that opened a lot of doors. So these days, a lot of clients are through word of mouth and through referrals. So and that's the best way to get into consulting, is through word of mouth, through warm leads, through referrals. But the first entry to get in, to actually get your foot in, is through networking platforms, especially for physicians, LinkedIn, um, and also Facebook groups as well. Those are really good as well.
Yeah, I've been impressed with how good a platform LinkedIn is.
Uh-huh.
I got a LinkedIn profile probably 8 or 10 years ago, and I don't think I mean, like when it first started,
Uh-huh.
I don't think I ever did anything with it until the last maybe year or year and a half or something like that.
Hmm.
And man, it's exploded. I mean, it's a great platform that not as many people are taking advantage of. So I'm
Yeah.
with you on that.
Yeah, LinkedIn is fabulous. As opposed to just the standard resume site. It's really it's got so many functionalities, capabilities, different features. So it's really it's a way to establish your reputational brand, automatic 24/7, for millions, and you don't really have to do too much. So it's got so many different capabilities.
Yeah, and you mentioned also going on some other platforms. I mean, obviously you're on this podcast, but you've
Yeah.
done other podcasts. You've done some, guest blogs and stuff. I've seen your stuff on Kevin MD, for example.
Yeah.
Was that also kind of part of the strategy as well?
Yeah, all the articles. Also, speaking engagements bring in a lot of clients as well, because that's also a platform to give a lot of value, service, and then especially anytime you brand building. So that's another concept, is building your brand. So that's through social media, especially like Instagram, and public speaking, writing articles, podcasting, YouTube. All these are ways to just exponentially grow your brand, get the word out, leverage your name, your products, your services.
So how do you go about booking speaking engagements? Are people coming to you after they hear, your stuff, or are you emailing folks and just saying, "Hey, listen, I'm available"?
Yeah, it's a combination. One is well, when you're first starting out, you're gonna have to knock on a lot of doors. So you're gonna have to send a lot of emails. You're gonna have to message people. You're gonna have to get your name out there. Once you get certain momentum and you start to get success, so for example, once you've spoken on TEDx or at a Fortune 500 or a Google type talk, then people start reaching out to you. So that's a lot of people are reaching out to me through LinkedIn, through Facebook. I think Peter Kim's Leverage and Growth Summit. That was also through networking and through reaching out as well. So it's going to be a combination of both. But when you're first starting out, you're gonna have to really knock on a lot of doors. You're gonna have to just experience, be okay with no, and just sort of you have to continue and just keep at it and just keep producing great content.
That sounds kind of like the real estate strategy that we discussed earlier, where you start with something small. Maybe you're doing a local Rotary club or something, or like or just go speaking at your med school, your local med school for free.
Mm-hmm.
Just go and offer to do a talk for the residents or the students at lunch or something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
then you do a group of 30, and then that starts to build that network, and then maybe the next one is a group of 60, and then maybe the next one. Then you start kind of building on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, consistency is key. So you have to keep doing it and keep getting your name out there and keep just basically building your brand awareness. So your first engagements, the best way to get in is to do it for free in the beginning. And as you grow your experience and your value, then people can start to you can start to charge for your engagements. I also the other thing is speaking is a great way to promote your books, your podcasts, your online programs, your coaching. So it's a great platform for that.
Yeah, I think that this is something that is really important for people to understand is that, anybody that you see who's kind of at the top of their game or who's considered an authority figure in their field, there was a time when they were not. And it's very difficult. I think it's very discouraging, and probably I think there's a lot of people who never actually take that first step
Mm-hmm.
because they look out and they go, oh well, what am I going to add? And that guy's already got everything figured out, or I could never do that, or like look how much this guy has. But everybody starts from zero. I mean, and
Yeah.
the ones that outlast are the ones that outlast. And so a lot of times, the key is, like you said, it's just continuing on. I read a book one time. I wish I could remember which book I read this in, but it was I want to say it was one of Simon Sinek's books, but it was talking about an inflection point, that there's sort of that hockey stick curve, right? So it's like very, very, very slow growth for a long time, and then suddenly it starts to take off.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the arguments that the author postulated was that a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs quit right before they hit that inflection point. It's just they finally get to that point of discouragement, and it's like if you just held out another 6 months, you would have seen something happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I always tell my client, that's what makes it so exciting is you never know what's going to happen. So you always just, keep at it. You never know who's the next contact, what that can lead to. A lot of my successes these days were from seeds that I planted 10 years ago, 8 years ago, a contact that I, lost, but got out of touch with, reconnected, and that led to another opportunity. So, and it's becoming more, the more you put yourself out there, the more you give value, and you come from a place of just giving and offering, the more the success comes back to you. But you have to get into that paradigm and mindset.
Yeah, you have to work a long time to be an overnight success.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Really fun. For folks that are wanting to get more of your content, maybe find your books or connect with you and learn more about passive income and achieving financial freedom through developing passive income streams, how can we connect to you?
So one is there's a link tree that'll be on the show notes. You can also go on the Amazon, and you can type in my name. You can search for all my 4 books. That's the easiest. And then I'm on YouTube. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I have a private Facebook group. And email. You can email me at ChristopherLouMDPhD@gmail.com.
Awesome. And we'll make sure we have all the links to all that stuff in the show notes and links to the books and everything as well. Well, he is Dr. Christopher Liu. Again, make sure you go look in the podcast description or go to the show notes and you can click the links to connect to him and get all of his great content. Well, Dr. Liu, thank you so much for joining us on the Scope of Practice podcast today.
Thanks so much, Brent. I really enjoyed our time together.